My first memory of coming to First Nations House, I was involved with like a youth arts project. There was a whole bunch of like indigenous youth working on these murals, and it was just really a beautiful space. I'd never seen anything like that. An educational space where the community was like making it their own, where they were adorning it with stories and teachings. Their totems, their clans, their relatives were all over the walls, and I thought that that was such a beautiful idea to really kind of reclaim the building itself of what First Nations House was. It was actually my older sibling, and she was a graduate of UofT, and she was the one leading those young people. Thinking back, it's kind of a beautiful way to recognize like the community that's come up through the school and have them come back and be a part of the work, the beautification, and the culture within the space.
I started with the transitional year program because I didn't finish high school due to my epilepsy. And so U of T really helped me, and First Nations House really helped me with that because of how they offered support and helped me with English or math or any skills that I needed help with. There was always like a place to have lunch or just go and have a coffee and socialize and meet other people. And I think that's what really helped me stay in school.
One of my most recent, last time I visited First Nations House was at our First Nations House graduation. And it felt like we just recognized in that moment, not only that like we were both there, but that we had just both accomplished like a huge thing. We struggled, we did at times in our masters, and that's something that we were able to do because of First Nations House being there and being that support for us. And so being at that graduation ceremony and seeing other Indigenous students, it was just this really beautiful space where we could all kind of really acknowledge that like very human and spiritual experience that we'd just gone through for the last few years.
Well, I think it is those gatherings, those, bringing community together to mark our milestones, from like the award ceremonies to the graduation ceremonies to the seasonal feasts, where it's like students, staff, and faculty coming together and getting to meet in a different way than in the classroom setting or in the offices, to know that we're all related, to know that we're all part of community. Even like memorials that have happened there for students who have passed on and professors and staff who have passed on, that we can come together and share the joys and the sorrows together and have that support from each other. So there's not one moment, it's just always like knowing that there will be a place to go when we need to go somewhere.
I ended up coming back to do like my postdoctoral work at UofT. I was really excited about just being able to work with different faculty, Indigenous faculty within like their Indigenous Studies program or organizing for NASA, and just to see all these diverse and brilliant Indigenous like professors and brilliant minds coming together to host Indigenous folks from all over the globe was really, it almost felt like a family. Just drinking tea, telling jokes, getting to know each other, like building really strong relationships. And I could just see there's just a lot of like efforts to give back and support the students and anyone who came through the doors of the building.
I think my favorite memory with First Nations House is learning more of my language, of Oneida language, because at the time Grafton Anton and his wife Eileen, they were a part of TYP and Oneida language, and studying Oneida language really helped me. And just like she spoke about tonight with the Thanksgiving address and all words that come before when we're giving thanks to things, and I learned that with the help of them and other elders that would come to visit.
Like us Indigenous folks, it's like hard to talk about like the financial struggles that like some of us come with, because there can be like a lot of dialogue that's not by us. I was encouraged so many times to apply for like the Gladys Watson Education Award. Because I got that award, like I needed someone to say like it's okay that like you are struggling, and it's okay like for you to have that kind of support if you can't get it like anywhere else. That investment wasn't only for me, like that went back to my community. Like I worked with research with like youth from my community. Like I paid honoraria to elders to youth. I had feasts. That was the reason I was able to do my studies in a way that felt right to me.
I think just jumping off that point as well, just the longitudinal relationships that, us as students are able to have with the First Nations House staff, I think makes a huge difference. It's such a trusting relationship. I think there's a lot about general student services that can be learned from the First Nations House model of, caring for community, making space for community, coming together.
All students have that understanding of each other and that how we're to treat everything with respect. And that's the way that life continues. And so I look forward to it growing. And I think that it's already grown a lot just in the past 30 years. And I think it's gonna go further with learning indigenous languages, indigenous culture, indigenous history.
I think as we work towards dismantling more barriers to allow more indigenous folk to get into whatever postgraduate education they decide to pursue, I think that what Christine said about community, seeing that community at First Nations House grow and continue to grow over the years would be really amazing to see. So,
But I kind of see First Nations House as a defender of Indigenous education, because you come to First Nations House and you meet other Indigenous folk, and they are bringing their worldviews and their understandings in their own ways and their lived experiences to U of T. And that can happen because of places like First Nations House. It's empowering Indigenous people to bring their own education to whatever field is available to them at U of T.
I think I'm starting to see it go in the direction that I would like, and is really expanding into land-based education, really expanding into having ceremonial spaces. And I see it going in that direction. I'm seeing their sacred fires and seeing stuff is going on at Heart House Farm. And I would like more of that. And I think First Nations House, I would love to see it in the center of U of T in a really big building with a lot of big windows, and have it be really a central hub. I think what you said, Christine, of how this model should be carried out and translated into Western models, into Western student services places. So to be the leaders in student services, not just Indigenous student services, but to use that model for other people to learn from, and have those relational practices of building communities of care, of that longevity, of that generational transmission from students who are graduating to mentor students coming in.
I think there's still work to be done around holistic models of education, around embodied movement, around our traditional dances, our songs, and what they do for the well-being of our communities. It feeds into the mission around community building, around sharing your gifts together, around Indigenous pedagogies. We bring in all these elements to celebrate life in a good way. In a place like downtown Toronto, as an Indigenous person, we need more of those places. There's just not enough spaces for us to practice that way of life. And First Nations House and U of T can definitely contribute to that good way of life.